Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders, a podcast from the Kentucky FFA Foundation. I'm one of your hosts, Sheldon McKinney.
And I'm your other host, Ruth Ann Fink. And today with us, we have our Kentucky FFA State President, Caroline Groth. She's a freshman at the University of Kentucky, and we're super excited to have her here with us. So, Caroline, we first want to ask you, what has been your path with agriculture education?
Well, everything started out kind of my freshman year. I got into FFA and agriculture education through showing sheep. Ruth Ann, your mom, Tony Myers, actually kind of recruited me to come to Locust Trace, which is where I went to high school and started my FFA journey. And I met my future advisors at the county fair. They told me I needed to come to Locust Trace and started there my freshman year. And ever since then, FFA has been a huge part of my life.
That is wonderful, Caroline. You know, you kind of have an interesting program that you come from. Locust Trace is in Fayette County, and it is one of our most unique programs in the state of Kentucky. You're not our first state officer from Locust Trace, but you are our first state president. Tell people who may not know kind of what inspired you to be a state officer and what the path was to becoming the state FFA president.
My leadership experience all started in middle school when I got involved in student council, but it wasn't until I started my freshman year at Locust Trace and became involved in FFA that I learned about all of the amazing leadership opportunities that FFA had. My middle school did not have an FFA chapter, so I had no idea coming into my freshman year what a state officer even was. So I remember my first state officer that visited our high school my freshman year. And from that moment on, I remember going home and telling my mom, and I was like, I want to be a state officer. But little did I know the journey that was going to be becoming a state officer. I went and participated in every event that I possibly could and met people. And I think the biggest piece of advice and what helped me the most to getting to be a state officer was making connections with people. That helped me practice interview skills, and kind of helped me, I don't know, kind of figure out who I am as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a question to follow up with the state president is, you know, for people who may not know, what does a state officer do? I think that might be a good question is if you're like, I don't know what the state president does. What do you do with FFA members? What's your interaction like?
Yeah, I feel like that's the best part about being a state officer is just the interactions that we get to have with members and the countless opportunities that you just get being a state officer is something that I'm still like just taking in. So everything from getting to be at FFA camp and lead workshops to getting to go to Washington, D.C. for the summit and meet state officers from all across the country. And then my favorite part is the chapter visits. Because when you go for a chapter visit, it's a time where members are a little bit more laid back and you just get to have like those genuine conversations with members and learn their stories. And I think just all the people you get to meet throughout your state officer year and the members that you get to impact, like that's the best part about being a state officer.
Yeah. Caroline, you're so genuine and it shines through, and I'm just so happy I get to know you and have got to witness some of that journey as you prepared to be a state officer. And I'll just tell our audience here that she was hungry to learn about herself and hungry to learn more. And I think you can just tell that. And so we're excited to hear some more about your experiences and how FFA has really impacted you. We talked some about what a state officer does. Your role in particular has a unique flair to it, if you will, that you get to sit on two boards as a student, which is really cool. So you get to sit on the Kentucky State Fair Board and then on the Kentucky FFA Foundation Board of Trustees. So we want to hear, why do you think it's so important to have a student perspective on those boards?
I love this question. And I had no idea going into it that I was going to get to serve on these boards. So after I got elected and Mr. Coliff told me that I got to serve on these boards, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so cool because I've showed livestock at the Kentucky State Fair since I was 9. And like these people that serve on the state fair board are like my idols. And getting to sit in a room with them, at a table with them, at this big like board table is crazy. And Nick Carter, who's the foundation chair, like he helped me with interviews and like prepping for state office and past contests and getting to serve on a board with him and Miss McKinney. Like I just, it's so surreal when you get in the room and sit at the table with them. Like it's crazy. But as far as having a student perspective, I feel like it's so important because my first state fair board meeting, we were talking about the grand drive, and all of those people in that room, they've attended the drive, but they've never been in the drive. And giving a perspective of somebody who's currently in it and living through like attending the state fair and competing in the state fair or attending camp or anything that the foundation covers, like I'm just like living through it now and hearing all of the feedback from my peers, and I get to bring all of that back to both the foundation and the state fair board. So I feel like I have a big responsibility, but it's such an honor to get to be that voice for members across the state.
Yeah, that's great. And your perspective is super valued on those boards. It's great to have that student perspective.
It is. Our foundation board, we have a wide variety of ages, but it's been our youngest person's probably in their late 20s. We have people who are in their 70s. We all had some kind of FFA experience for the most part, but not of your generation and your voice and what your challenges are, what have been some great things we've done. And FFA, I think, has remained relevant for so long because we are a student-driven organization. If we had, people my age making all the decisions about what's cool at state convention, it would not be cool anymore, and so it's so important that we have your all's voices, and it's an honor to get to sit at a table with you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Yeah. So a question for you as state president this year, I've kind of asked you at the end of this year, what will success look like? What is kind of your goal of this year when you're out visiting members and seeing communities across Kentucky? What do you hope you accomplish this year?
I feel like it took me a minute to realize what I wanted my goal to be at the end of the year. When I was going through the process of preparing, the best piece of advice was know your why. When you go into it, know your why. And for me, a huge part of my life is my faith. And so when I started preparing for state office, that was kind of the root of everything that I did. Was I wanted to show the joy and the light of Jesus to everyone around me. And for me this year, that means every conversation I have with any member or advisor, I want them to leave the conversation feeling like it was, one, a genuine conversation, and two, that like both of us got something out of it, and that they didn't feel like I was just like nodding my head and going along, but that like we really had a connection. And I want to share like that joy and that sincere conversation and connection with members across the state and just make people feel valued. I think that's my goal.
That's a great goal. I think so many students now, it is easy to feel like nobody is, to feel invisible maybe, and so I think you coming and doing chapter visits and knowing people's name and knowing who they are, that really, it's an experience that lasts for many years for people.
Yeah. I'm sure you would agree with it that a lot of people have this idea that the state officers are the ones influencing members all the time. But the secret sauce is really that FFA members influence the state officers in so many ways. And in those interactions, like you mentioned, or on chapter visits. Can you tell us about how FFA members have influenced you so far as the state president?
Yes. I think that is the most wonderful part of being a state officer. And I still like, it's so surreal for me. Like every time I think about it, like it literally makes me want to cry, because in my eyes, like I am no different from any Kentucky FFA member in the state. I just have a different title. And getting to see like members at camp or at chapter visits who, when you walk in the room and they're like, oh my goodness, the state FFA president is here. I'm like, oh my goodness, all of these Kentucky FFA members are here. Like, and just seeing how excited and passionate they are about like wanting to be in those leadership positions and like wanting to change Kentucky FFA is phenomenal. But the support that they have for like me and our entire state officer team is great. And a perfect example of this is this past week, I had the opportunity to release an article with Kentucky Farm Bureau. And I was kind of worried about it because I've never written an article for a magazine before. When it got posted, the amount of members who texted me or like sent me DMs on Instagram or shared it, I'm like, Kentucky FFA really is just like a big family. And I know that's kind of cheesy, but it is just amazing to see how like everyone supports each other.
Oh, that's special.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I have a question here for you, and it's a tidbit that we hope that when folks listen, they just get to collect all kinds of great advice and pass it along. But my question for you is, what is the best leadership advice you've ever received?
This is, I'm sure everybody will have heard this before, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Be yourself. I feel like so often in leadership positions, there's so much pressure to come across a certain way or be a certain way or speak a certain way or say certain things. But the thing is, people are not going to accept something that's not genuine and not you. I know I can just remember when I was practicing with Ruth Ann before state office, and we were at the castle and we were sitting in the trailer of the castle, and we were talking about like just having genuine responses and telling my story and how that was going to be what was the most impactful for people to hear, was just about my life, about Caroline, about me. Like I didn't need to be anybody else or like try to be something that I wasn't. But my biggest piece of advice is, yes, just be yourself. And if people don't like that, then I guess find new people. That's kind of blunt, but
Yeah, you talked about how Kentucky FFA is super supportive, and I think that's true. Like so many people support you, and that's the beauty of it, is that people can show up and they can be themselves and feel included here. So thanks for sharing that. Another question we always ask our guests, Caroline, is around philanthropy. So we are a philanthropic organization, which is all about giving back. So we would like to ask you, who is someone that has really poured into you, given back to you, that you'd like to shout out right now?
Oh my goodness. There are so many people. To name just one is very difficult. I'm going to name two. I know that's probably not what I'm supposed
Go for it.
to.
We'll allow it. Yeah.
But first is my parents, of course. They are the most selfless people in my entire life, and the way that they continuously show up for me and support me in everything that I do. I get multiple texts from them every single day. Like we have a group chat. Anytime like I'm doubting myself, I'm an Enneagram 1, wing 2, and my biggest thing is like I have a big inner critic. So the people that support me a lot of the times can like talk me out of it and just like give me those words of affirmation. And that's kind of how like I, can get out of a divot. But my parents, they're wonderful people, and I'm so blessed to be their daughter. But secondly is my advisor, Tony Myers, Ruth Ann's mom. From the moment I met her, it's like we've just instantly clicked, and she's really like a second mom to me. And she's such a role model in my life in so many ways. Just one, being an advisor. Two, I would consider her one of my best friends, even though she is my advisor. And also the way she leads like such a godly life, and also like the way she's such a good mom, like from what I see, to Ruth Ann and your brother. And just I got to spend a lot of time with her last year because I work for her at the castle. And just everything that she does, like she's constantly doing things for other people, and like has just such a big circle, but can somehow like reach all of them so well. Like my goal in life is to one day like be able to do what Tony Myers does.
Oh, that's really sweet. She is a little biased, but she's a pretty great woman.
She is really great. And it's also a testament to just the influence that agriculture teachers have on our lives, and it's wonderful. Well, last question here. That's kind of our standard question. It's shifting gears a little bit, but what is something that you're loving right now that's helping you grow? It could be a gadget, a podcast, an app, but just something that you could pass along to the folks that's helping you grow.
one thing that's really helped me grow this year through my journey as a state officer is reflection and like journaling and journal prompts. So I have not in the past not really been a person who prioritizes reflection, but this year, multiple of like my mentors and state staff have just told me like reflection is a good tool. So I'm in my dorm room right now, and I'm actually looking at my journal, and every night before I go to bed, after I read my devotion, I try to reflect on the day, whether it's a chapter visit or just my classes at school or interactions I have with people. I think reflection is where I've seen myself grow the most this year, and that's really special, and I'm excited to continue that and then have that to look back on after this year. I don't know, it's just a cool tool.
Yeah, I'm proud of you for trying something new. I think that's great, Caroline.
Thank you.
That is wonderful. And so, Caroline, for me, I have to reflect back on just some of the impact of the Kentucky FFA Foundation that we've had. Our foundation is older than you are. We were founded in 1987. I've been in this role for 12 years. I think that, we started giving scholarships to the Washington Leadership Conference. You receive one of those scholarships. We give SAE grants for students to start or expand SAE projects. You've received one of those grants. You have a banners on the wall behind you that are a testament to that investment we made in your SAE project, how you've grown in Kentucky agriculture, and now how you are a leading voice for the future of Kentucky agriculture. So it really is full circle that when people give to the Kentucky FFA Foundation through the good work of ag teachers across communities, it influences and impacts students. And you're just a real testament to a lot of people giving and years of good leadership in Kentucky FFA.
Yes. Very thankful for the foundation and everything that it does. And I really would not be where I am today if it wasn't for the support of the Kentucky FFA Foundation.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, we are so glad that you were with us today and that we've got to hear from you. We're just so glad that you were a guest on our podcast. I hope if people are listening that they get to meet you or see you somewhere and they come say hello and tell you that they listened to your episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay. That's it, folks. Thanks for listening. Growing Kentucky's Leaders is a podcast from the Kentucky FFA Foundation. The music has been performed by Bourbon County FFA member Joe Fritch. Production is provided by Isaiah Pruitt. Our artwork is by Julie Fritch Creative. Your hosts are Sheldon McKinney and Ruth Ann Fink, and you can find us on all social platforms at Kentucky FFA.